Welcome to Conversations on Healing and Growth. I'm Ben Umstead.
And I'm Martin Perkins.
So we wanted to begin today's show by sharing some words from Pema Chodren, who is a Tibetan Buddhist monk and an extraordinary writer. We wanted to share with you some words specifically from her book, When Things Fall Apart. Things falling apart is a kind of testing and also a kind of healing. We think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem. But the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and fall apart. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for sharing the quote. One way I would offer, and in a quote that I shared in Language of the Soul, A Path of Simplicity, that I think addresses this from a Sufi perspective, is leave your dogma, your doubts and beliefs at the door. Its roundness, never-ending and all-welcoming. I am oneness within the depths beyond the open door. In other words, in being open to what's here and now, and often here and now, as this moment feels like, based on any number of national, local events all going on, it feels very much like the world around us is falling apart, right? There's things that are disintegrating. They're not coming into integration, into wholeness. They're falling apart so that something else can happen. And that an approach that human beings often take at this moment is, how do we overcome this obstacle, right? It's a cultural story, right? That when things arise, the cultural story that we've been told from around the world, it can be, we often reference it here in our podcast as the Ascension Myth. It's ingrained in us quantitatively, qualitatively, in our cultural values, our education, our financial system, the manner in which the classes are divided. It all kind of speaks to the point of the goal of ascension through a series of obstacles built in by the culture. And the problem is that this path of ascension, it doesn't work. It's a dead end. And while we all have had that temporal sense of reaching success within a goal, the truth is we wake up the next morning and what's placed before us is another set of goals that we need to overcome. And oftentimes it's the same obstacle. It's just reappeared. The belief around this, these sets of obstacles and the accompanying a doubt, this toggling back and forth between belief and doubt around whether or not we can or I can overcome, whether we can overcome these obstacles. It's an endless cycle of striving, and it's a trap. It's a living story humanity exists within without realizing there's another option. And this is in many ways what Pema Chodren is pointing at. And what I'm wanting to do is to blend this Tibetan Buddhist concept with what is in many ways a Taoist perspective, but also one that's shared in a lot of traditions that seek to allow us to let go of this need for striving, this need to overcome something rather than letting there be room to be right where we are. And, the first noble truth of the Buddha is to let go of this notion that suffering can be overcome by avoiding it. As Pema Chodren puts it, the first noble truth of the Buddha is that suffering is inevitable as long as we believe that things last. This notion of things lasting, it's expressed through the ascension culture, this belief that if I keep striving, I will ascend to the top. That's where the two kind of articulations of this find their meeting point. There is no lasting security. There is no lasting avoidance of suffering. In this time of great uncertainty in the world, the only real truth that we have before us is the willingness to allow the rug to be pulled out from under us, to allow it to be uncertain, that we allow ourselves not to be put back to sleep, but rather to awaken to the truth of this moment, which is we are witnessing the falling apart of national and international institutions and norms. Life in our world is falling apart, and there's a trickle-down effect, right? We see it in our local communities. We see it in the manner in which literally an entire state is under siege by our federal government. And what the federal government keeps saying to those people under siege is, don't fight back. Don't be in your truth. Don't be willing to step into what is, in essence, they're modeling for us a willingness to be in their suffering for the sake of their fellow human being. I don't see what's happening in Minnesota as a form of the ascension culture. They're not trying to overcome something. They're trying to be authentically with their fellow human being. This is the only authentic and kind and loving response to an assault by human beings willing to assert control in ways that are inexplicable, all for, I don't know, greed and power. And so, Pema Chodren puts it so beautifully when she says, to stay with that shakiness, to stay with a broken heart, with a rumbling stomach, with the feeling of hopelessness and wanting to get revenge. That is the path of true awakening. Sticking with that uncertainty, getting the knack of relaxing in the midst of chaos, learning not to panic. This is the spiritual path. Getting the knack of catching ourselves, of gently catching ourselves, is the path of the warrior. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. When I read that, I feel its extraordinary wisdom and the manner in which, with such clarity, she exposes the true nature of the path and the necessity to just be with whatever's right here, right now. I find inspiration in it and possibility, but also it's discomfort, that it's okay for me to be uncomfortable and inspired at the same time by this message and by the need for us to share this message, because there isn't any other place to be right now than in this. If you're really going to be truthful with yourself about the nature of the world itself, the manner in which it's crumbling. And really, in so many ways, it needed to. The neoliberal order installed after World War II, it served to great purpose, but it's now crumbling under autocratic rule. And locally, nationally, internationally, something else needs to be put in its place that can lead us to healing and growth. And I'm not claiming to have the answer to where we need to go, but I am claiming that the path there is that of the willingness to be annihilated so that that which is indestructible can be found in us, individually and collectively. We have to find that strength in ourselves.
Yeah, because then there's that sense that we can gently catch ourselves, right? To go back to her words again, to gently catch ourselves. And that's what we're witnessing in how people are showing up in Minnesota. It's indestructible. And like you noted, you have the space within to feel uncomfortable and to feel inspired, right? And this is something that's very important to note again. It may feel challenging, finite, difficult in an interpersonal space or an external space in the way that the Ascension Myth is so powerful and so potent. But at the core of each of ourselves is something so much more expansive, wordless, formless, and yet of all forms, right? The 10,000 things.
Right. And a willingness to be with ourselves in the midst of this disintegration. Rumi puts it this way: the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. And when Rumi says the door is round and open, he's saying it's available to us all, that this notion, this largely Christian notion of the veil, this Judeo-Christian notion of the veil, right, is built around this idea that one must ascend to break the veil, one must accomplish to break the veil. And Rumi is saying, the door's round, it's open. You simply need to be here and now in order to be connected to it. It may not feel comfortable. It may not feel even remotely easy, but that's the nature of a path that's earnest in its pursuit or its letting go into healing and growth. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep.
Conversations on Healing and Growth is produced by Ben Umstead and Martin Perkins, with editing and music by Ben Umstead.